Hello, yes, that's right. It's Joe here live for Joyrider TV, coming from the all new, not quite as new anymore, Joyrider new studio facility here in the southern end of Lefkos Island, Greece. Yes, hello, and glad you could make it. So we're just about to embark on a Q&A session where you're going to be supplying the questions and I'm hopefully going to be coming up with satisfactory answers. If you do happen to be watching this later on, not live, then don't worry if you have got any burning catamaran sailing questions in mind. Just put them in the video comment section, which is generally situated below the video, and I will respond to them in next week's Q&A session. Oh, yes, I will. So just checking in with everybody who's checking in. Nice to see you all out there. We've got 2 in Texas, as always. Wishing everyone a grand and glorious day, receiving important information guaranteed to enhance your sailing and catamaran racing experience. Oh, yes, thanks for the endorsement there, too. We'll see how that goes. Too also adds, be sure to hit the like button on arrival. You don't get to see a bit, decide whether you like it. It's just the entry fee today is to hit the like button when you tune in. We got Mark on board in Ohio. Great to have you with us, Mark, as always. We've got Max. No wind today at Lake Simsee, Rosenheim, Germany. So I'm here in time for the Q&A. Very nice too. Great to have you with us, Max. And then we got Ryan in Maui in the Pacific Ocean. Heavy rains here for the weekend. So it looks like he'll be working on his Hobie 14 project boat. And exciting news in, I only just saw this, but Ryan has just announced that he is going to be a sponsor of the 2023 Speed Stick. Yeah, Ryan deals with bees. And as a byproduct of dealing with bees, he makes honey coming from Maui in the Hawaiian Islands. And he will be supplying a case of honey to the fastest boat of the year. So I should get polishing your rudder blades because that honey, I've tasted it. It's worth sailing fast for. Chris is on board. Hello, Chris. Nice to have you with us. Leland Lee is also with us from Clearwater, Florida. We've also got Karina, I believe maybe a first time in, maybe. Could be right, could be wrong. We've also got Paulius coming from the CATAMARAN sailing team, Lithuania. Great to have you with us there, Paulinus. Hope it's all good where you are. Leland Lee says, hope we have room on the board for everyone. Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. I'm sure there's room on the board. Pierre's on board in Quebec, Canada. Nice to have you with us, Pierre. Yeah, Corina agrees. That's an awesome prize. Second time with us. Nice. Okay, so what we have got, as always, is some pre-loaded questions. And I thought I might just steam in with the first one while we're just revving up today. And this one comes, hello. This one comes from, if I can find it, here we go. This one comes from David, who says he's got a mast float, a Baby Bob, one of the pivoting ones on the top of his mast on the Hobie 16s. Says the bearings are shot and it's weather cracked. He's asking, is it actually necessary? And if he capsizes, should the mast float anyway? Okay, so the idea with the mast float is to stop the boat from inverting. The mast in general on most types of catamaran these days, anything made since about 1980 should, as standard, have a sealed mast. That means the mast is filled with air, which means that if you do capsize, like let's just say you lost all your rigging and your mast went in the water, then the mast should float. There we are. The mast should float, but the mast, the buoyancy in the mast is not going to stop the boat from inverting. That is why the masthead float is quite popular. So for those of you who are not familiar with the masthead float, this is our boat. On its side, there's the mast. And let's just put some water in at an angle to fit the picture that I've already drawn. Yeah, so if the wind is blowing in certain directions, like especially if the wind was blowing onto the bottom of your trampoline after you've capsized, with no mast float, the boat would invert, so mast straight down, pretty quickly. So this can be an issue for a number of reasons. The main and most pressing issue is that there is a danger of getting trapped under the boat when you capsize. If after you've capsized, you're in this position, here you are, in the water, in the space next to the trampoline, if when you capsize, you're not getting out of that position quick enough and the wind happens to be in that angle blowing onto the bottom of the trampoline, then there is a chance that you could get caught under the trampoline, and that can be pretty alarming or worse. So the masthead float, number one, is going to stop the boat from inverting. So if you are in that position, it won't be as dangerous as if you don't have a masthead float. But most people sail without a masthead float. So how do we get around this problem, you may ask? Well, what we do is as soon as you've capsized, once you find yourself in this position, you want to get out of that situation straight away. First thing you do when you end up in the water is, if you are towards the back of the boat from the shroud, you get out round the back. If you're forwards of the shroud, get out to the front. But the main thing is just get out from that space as quickly as you can. And then once you've done that, then it's time, or while you're doing that, it's also important to communicate with the other members of the team on board your boat. Are you okay? I'm just in a bad spot here, getting out as we speak, kind of thing. If you've got the masthead float on, then this isn't such an issue. If the wind's blowing this way, you could still find yourself, if you were here, your legs going under the hull, which could also be quite alarming. So I would say get out from that spot, whether you've got a mast float or not, whatever the wind direction is, that is a sketchy place to be. So that is the number one benefit of the masthead float, which is basically like a small kind of airship that sits on the top of your mast. The second advantage with the masthead float and how it stops you from inverting is if you sail somewhere shallow. Let's draw. So if the seabed was down here with some boulders and pointy things, you certainly wouldn't want to be dragging your mast and your sail over all that lot. So I know a lot of people who sail on shallow lakes, They use masthead floats because if the boat inverts, the mast can go into the bottom. So again, if the wind was in this direction, if the mast goes down into the bottom, it could get pretty stuck, making it quite tricky to get it out again. So another good reason to have the masthead float. One question that comes up quite a lot is, will the masthead float actually make it easier to bring the boat back upright? Well, of course, having it means we don't have to bring it up from inverted if it was going to invert, but it actually makes it marginally, very slightly harder to bring the boat upright from this position, just because of the weight of the float itself at the top of the mast. Yeah. So there we are. Those are the reasons why you would have a masthead float. So if your masthead float is, hold on, just organizing my windows a little bit. If your masthead float is in the process of giving up, what would be worse than not having a masthead float would be having a masthead float which fills with water. So if your float is filling with water or is cracked and could possibly take water on, then definitely take it off. You're better off not having that bad boy on there. So I'm just messing around with some lighting as we go. All right, so there we go. I hope that was helpful there, David. So if you are sailing somewhere shallow, or if you're sailing in a recreational kind of situation, not so worried about going fast, not racing, then it is worth putting a masthead float on. It will give you that peace of mind that the boat isn't going to invert. All right, so let's see who else is in the live chat. We've got Paul on board. Hello, Paul. Great to have you with us today from the cold and damp Cheshire. Halfway up England, cold and damp. It's pretty damp here in Greece at the moment, I have to say. It has been raining pretty much non-stop, on and off, whatever that means, for the last 2 weeks at least. It is certainly as wet as an otter's pocket around here. All right, so Paul is looking for a set of 16 sails. If you're in the UK or even in Europe and you're selling some 16 sails, get in touch and we'll put you in touch with Paul, and then we can sort out the details. But there we go. Ollie Smith is on board. Hello, Ollie. The countdown is on. Yes, Ollie Smith, of course, one of the key personnel on the Wildwind Beach, I believe, coming out start of March, unless I've been a bit out of touch, and ready to get stuck in to some good stuff out here. All right, we've got Marcelo on board as well. Great to have you with us. Paulius says to Paul, you can check out Forward Sails if you want some non-original Hobie sails. They certainly do come in at a very good price, the Forward Sails, and they make a nice square top mainsail for the 16, which is nice. Where did we see that last? In fact, the Swiss guys, who are currently killing it on the all-new speed stick, are using those Forward Sails to great effect. So I think those guys are really doing a great advert for those sails. All right, we got, I don't know how you pronounce that, IMKHKS. Oh, Lee here. That's how you pronounce it. Hello, Lee. What is the fastest way to get out of irons as a beginner? Great question. We haven't talked about this for a long time. Yeah. So when we talk about going in irons, it's the experience when you're sailing a catamaran of just not being able to make the boat go forwards. Okay, so let's draw a boat. Usually, if you can't make the boat go forwards, the boat would be sitting quite close to head to wind. Um, One of the main reasons that your boat won't go forwards is because what you're doing with the sails, um, the mainsail in particular. What the mainsail does, if you're not moving forwards and you haven't got good grip with the rudders, so if the rudders aren't working because you're not going forwards, those bad boys are not going to work unless you're going forwards. I can tell you that. I've experienced it. What the mainsail does, if you've got the mainsail in tight or in at all, in fact, what that is doing is putting pressure behind the pivot point. And let's just say, generally, the pivot point is about here. So it's putting pressure behind the pivot point. And what that is doing, obviously, it's pivoting and it's just trying to hold the boat head to wind. So the first thing you should do if you want to get out of irons, out of head to wind, out of stalled, is let off a load of main sheet. Let off the traveller as well. If you let the main and the traveller off, then there's not going to be this pressure trying to pull the boat up to head to wind. That's going to really help you out. Then if the wind is very light, and this is especially useful if you're sailing a boat which is really difficult to get out of irons, like the Hobie 14, then what you can do to absolutely get the boat away from head to wind quickly or from stalled quickly is where you sit on the boat. If you start putting your weight towards this corner, then what you're doing is you're moving the pivot point from here to here. And by putting the pivot point here, it means all of the sails are further forwards than that pivot point, which means all of the sails are going to be working to bring the boat away from the wind. So this is how you can get the boat out of irons the quickest, but you do need to be careful. If there's much wind, if you go down here, it would be very easily to capsize backwards. So only in very light winds should you be actually putting all of your weight back here. But if you move towards this corner of the boat, that's really going to help you to get out of that stalled position. There we go. The other thing you can do, of course, if you've got a jib, is pull the jib onto the wrong side, and then that's going to pull. What we're trying to do is have as much stuff pulling the nose of the boat off the wind as possible. So we let the mainsail off. That's going to help. Jib on the wrong side. That's going to help. Get our pivot point further back and on the leeward side. That's going to help. It's all going to help. One thing to be aware of is whether you're going backwards as well. If you really are sitting into the wind, then the wind is just going to be blowing you straight back, which means you firstly need to observe that you are going backwards. You should be able to spot that fairly easily by watching the water going past. And then if you are going backwards, you just want to put your rudders what would usually be the wrong way. But because we're going backwards, that's going to turn the boat off the wind. But then the most important is to spot when we start going forwards again. Because when we start going forwards again, then you need to there we go. Hope that helps. Okay. Just scrolling back a little bit here. Was that? Oh, right. That was Lee. I actually missed a question from before that, which was from Toot, who says, what is the best way to keep the cat in irons when dropping and raising the sails? Yeah, not quite as easy to do. If you haven't got the mainsail up, you haven't got any steering, then how do you keep the boat pointing into the wind? All right, one thing you can do if the boat isn't pointing into the wind and you haven't got any sails up is if you move further forwards on the boat and sink the front of the boat, that means, like how we were putting the pivot point here, we're then using as our kind of sea anchor, if you like, our pivot point. So the wind is then just going to hit the boat and that should pivot round into the wind. If you're putting the sails up, that's not always going to be possible. So what I would do if I was going to be hoisting the sails while afloat, I'd try to avoid hoisting the jib afloat if I can avoid it. I would always put the jib up on land because it really is far too fiddly, depending on the type of boat. But the mainsail, I would jab the boat up into the wind as much as I could before hoisting, and then hoist a bit. And if the boat starts coming off the wind, then just grab the leech of the sail, pull it, and that is doing the same as oversheeting the mainsail. You're actually physically doing it by grabbing the leech if the sail's only up a little bit. And then by grabbing the leech of the sail, rudders across, that should pull you up into the wind so you can continue. One thing to really make sure, if you are ever hoisting your mainsail in an unusual position or any position, to be honest, is just make sure that the mast is lined up with the wind and the sail. If the mast is like here and the wind is as it is on the boards, then you're going to have a ton of friction coming from here. So it's really important to make sure that the mast does line up with the sail, and then the sail should fly up. What I did when I was doing the test, the R&D for a video, I think it was last year, hoisting the mainsail afloat, was I actually dipped the luff, the front edge of the mainsail, in the water before hoisting, because then, as we know, by having a moistened luff of the mainsail, it goes up the mast so much easier. Even if it's salt water, as long as you don't let it dry before putting it up the mast, if you get it wet, then hoist it immediately, it is definitely easier to hoist. So there we go. That is what I would suggest there, Mr. Toot. All right. So going down, Toot says, I turtled a Nacra 5.2, got stuck in a tree. Got stuck in a tree during a storm, completely totaled the boat. Oh no. Gosh, that sounds like quite a harrowing experience. Goodness gracious. All right. We've got Duke on board. Hello, Duke. Great to have you with us. Is there a good way to put a compass on a catamaran? Now, if you're happy, if you're lucky enough to be sailing a catamaran which has a spinnaker, then the spinnaker pole makes for a very easy compass mounting solution for your boat. But if you don't have a spinnaker pole, then the two options you've got are either the trampoline at the front, which is probably the more practical solution, or at the lower section of the mast. Now, the problem with putting it on the lower section of the mast is you've got your downhaul and maybe some other controls going on in that area. And what you don't want is your compass bracket to be interfering with your downhaul at all. So I would go for like at the front of the trampoline. If you're sailing like a boat with a three-piece trampoline like this, where you've got your lacing down the middle, then this presents quite a few opportunities for mounting a compass. You just have to see what brackets are available for the model of compass that you've got. If you've got a boat which is with a one-piece trampoline, then most trampolines would have an eyelet in the middle at the front. Now, this would be very handy for lashing a compass bracket to. What you could do is take a line. If this, I think you could get brackets which are kind of like L-shaped like this. So the compass itself mounts on this bit. And then you have a piece that comes out like this. So if that was here, you could then take a line out of this hole that will go over there and then back down the hole. And what you do down there to lash it off is your own business. But perhaps around the dolphin striker or around the whole beam, many opportunities there. All right, Ollie Smith says, oh my gosh, there's a lot in the live chat. Rain is not what I wanted to hear. It's all right. We're getting rid of all the rain now. So then by the time anybody else comes out here, it will be just wall to wall, sunshine, good times, cold beers, barbecue on the beach. Very nice too. All right, we got Hands on board as well. An last year's star player in the Tornado Park on the Wildwind Beach. Out there, no wind, but snow instead. Ooh. Goodness gracious. All right, Mark says, do I see some stringed instruments behind your whiteboard? Play these? Yes, I do. If you really want to be in for a treat, here we go. This is news just in. And let's see if I can just find out what this is called. I've actually got a second channel on YouTube called, you might have to write this down, JBMGT. Check that out and you'll see some music that I'm doing. I do enjoy playing music and I play it a lot. So yes, I do. There you are, JBMGT on YouTube. All right, we've got Montineku. Sorry about the poor pronunciation of YouTube usernames, but they're tricky at the best of times. Tuning in from Chile. Best instructional channel ever. Yes, you can stay. Thank you very much. All right, we've got Lee in the middle of Georgia, Lake. Oh, Tobbers. I'm just going to give up on trying to pronounce anything today. Thanks for coming, Lee. Great to have you with us. All right. And we got Chris says, I thought the glitches were my bad signal. I don't know what the glitches are. I think we should have some pretty smooth internet coming from Greece at the moment. RJ Fleet is on board in frozen Minnesota, USA. Paul says signal got not great today. Yeah, I don't know if I got anything juicy open. I'm just checking. No, in fact, I don't have anything juicy open. So there we go. All right, we've got Ryan on board, as we said earlier. Ryan, who is the honey sponsor for the Speed Stick. He says, I'm looking for some advice on taking my jib down. I have a halyard and ring with an S hook and have been having a time getting it unhooked to bring it down. Suggestions or methods, please? Yes, I am familiar with this. Let's just draw what Ryan's talking about. It's not completely commonplace these days, but what you would have is up here, there'd be a ring. And then on the top of the jib halyard, so if this is the jib, there'd be basically a hook where the line goes through the ring and that hook goes onto the ring. I used to sail a Dart 18, which uses this system. And yes, there is absolutely a knack to getting it unhooked. I'm just casting my mind back even now. But what really helps is if it is a moving ring, like if it can go up and down, to try to have it so there's a bit of friction in whatever's holding it to your forestay. So if it's possible to have a bit of friction there, so if you pull the hook up high and it pushes the ring up, then you don't want it to fall down again immediately. Because if it does, then the jib's going to hook in every time. What you want is when you pull the jib halyard up, for it to stay in that position or just to drop down slowly, so then you can get your jib unhooked. But what I used to find was halyard in one hand, bottom of the jib in the other, and just pulling it up different amounts like this, pulling it up, pulling it down. If that hook back in, pull it up slightly less, pull it down, pull it up slightly less, pull it down. And there will be a sweet spot for trying that, for getting it to come down. But if that ring, every time it's been up, if it just drops down immediately, it's going to be more difficult to unhook. You could even, just thinking out loud here, you could even attach a thin piece of elastic to the ring going up the forestay a bit higher to actually encourage it to come up a bit. And then that means that when you pull it up, it won't flop down immediately. A bit of trial and error. I would put the boat on its side and do a bit of R&D on that there, Ryan, and see if you can come up with a scheme. But I would certainly tighten up however that is attached there. All right, Chris says, why not use some sail coat on the luff of the main? Well, yeah, if you had the foresight to put it on before going on the water for hoisting the sail on the water, then you're in. But for us here in Greece, we don't use anything other than water as our lubricant, because the main reason is because we have so many boats, we'd get through an absolute ton of lubricant. And the second reason is not actually that long ago, one of the guys on the beach used some lubricant, got it over the whole sail. It was a nightmare. Took half a day to get it off the sail. And when the sail got wet, lubricant was just dripping on to the trampoline, all the ropes. Terrible time. Don't do that. All right, 34 minutes. I'm just going to take a short commercial break. Cue toot with the elevator music. Okay, I'm just going to crack straight on today. Lots to talk about. All right, so Ryan says he's got a Nacra 500, Prindle 16, Hobie 14. Tries the quick pull, but it's been difficult if there's any wind. Yeah, just varying amounts of pull, I would say. All right, just skimming through now. All right, so Chris has got a tip. You have to go all the way to the top until the ring flips horizontal or higher. There we go. All right. I think everyone's having a little boat off now. What boats do you have? Or Chris adds to this, swap the halyard to a 1/8 of an inch Dyneema and use the Hobie style halyard. That would, of course, be quite an easy solution. All right, we've got Jamie Bravo on board. Good morning. Great to have you with us. All right, Karina says, I'm coming through fine in Los Angeles. Glad to hear that. I think I took a short commercial break. Maybe that sorted it all out. All right. We've got Declan on board in Sweden. Good evening, all. Great to see you. And all in the chat. Nice. All right. Couldn't find the music channel. Can you put it in the description? Yeah, I'll have a look. All right. Just scanning through the live chat. See you later, Karina. And hello, Dobie. Great to have you with us. It's all right. Better late than never. Thanks for tuning in. All right. So I'm going to go on to the next preloaded question, if I can find it. All right. Here we are. This is from Lord Admiral Thor, who, of course, is a great sailor. Says, question, why not use a lifeline? So we're back on the topic of some sort of tether that you attach yourself to when you go out sailing. Yeah, from probably about 2 years ago when this question first came up in a live chat, and I was quite kind of like, no, you wouldn't find me doing that. No, I won't do that. I'll always hang on to the main sheet. So if you capsize and you're single-handed, hang on to the main sheet and you won't get separated from the boat. But however, what Lord Admiral Thor was responding to was a video from a couple of years ago where I was sailing a 16 reefed single-handed and I pitch poled. And of course, when you go forwards out the front door, it is very difficult to stay hanging on to the main sheet in the heat of the moment. And if the main sheet isn't long enough, you could really hurt your hand. So it's not always possible to hang on to the main sheet. So I now do think if you are going sailing on your own, single-handed, and in open water, especially, perhaps you're just going out sailing on the sea and it's pretty windy and you're on your own, there aren't any other boats out, no safety cover, anything like that, then having some method of attaching yourself to the boat, I think, is quite sensible. Because if you fall off the boat, that could be it, curtains. If you can't get back to it, which, having done all the testing that I did the year before last, I believe, it is easier than you think to get separated from your boat. The main thing is, if you're not using some sort of tether, just to always, absolutely always, even if there's no wind at all, have a hand on the main sheet. Because if who knows what might happen, you know, a whale might come past, flap his tail, big wave, you get knocked off the boat, even in zero wind. And if you're not holding on to anything, then the boat might get away from you and you can't get back to it. So always be holding on to the main sheet. Quite interestingly, I've pretty much spent the whole day editing the next edition of What Went Wrong. Yeah, this is going to be great. You're going to like this. I'm going to have it out on Sunday, What Went Wrong, at the usual time. But one of the sailors in What Went Wrong had a very good system for staying attached to the boat. He's sailing solo. And that is actually to have a carabiner clip, which is where you've got the loop of rope from the main sheet to the traveler. He's got the carabiner clip on there, and then he clips that clip onto his harness. So then that means that he is attached to the main sheet loop, which means it's a double whammy of goodness, actually. It means if he falls in the water, then the main sheet is automatically going to sheet in. And as we saw in the testing that I did, when the main sheet sheets in, it either brings the boat head to wind, so the boat will stop, or if it's windy, it will actually capsize the boat, making it much easier to get back to the boat. So this seemed like a very good idea indeed. And in fact, as you're going to see on the video on Sunday, if he hadn't have had that, he might have lost the boat and the situation might have been pretty unideal. So there we go. That is what I think about using some sort of tether. Yes, I think it's a good idea. Even I can't remember where I saw it. Someone mentioned that they'd used one of these dog leads, which is on like a recoil kind of thing, so that it would not get tangled up in stuff. If you are using one of those, then put it in the comments below. Let us know how you're getting on with it. Is it a viable solution? Because what we don't want to be doing is losing yourself overboard and you can't get back to the boat. There we go. Okay, back in the live chat. Hello to everyone. Declan says, I'm considering replacing the foot of my mast on the Hobie Getaway with a Tiger foot in order to get a downhaul block on it, as the Getaway doesn't have a cleat. All right. What are your thoughts? Yeah, to be honest, I've never actually seen a Getaway in the flesh. I've only seen pictures or videos of them. So the first thing that you'll need to check, and I'm sure in Sweden, you'll be able to find a Tiger easy enough. Maybe there's one parked next to your Getaway, but check that the mast is the same section. If the mast is the same section on the Tiger as it is on the Getaway, then I think it's a great idea, actually. But the standard Tiger downhaul arrangement, I'm going to draw it, is like this. So if this is the mast, then let's see how we're going to draw the mast base, kind of bottom of the mast. And then the mast base has got like some fingers like this. Sorry, that's not very good. And then quick switch of colors, you'll see here. And then on each of these, we have a pulley, a sheave there, a sheave there. And then actually in the middle, we have a sheave going the other way. We're all getting this. And then up here on the bottom of the sail, what we'd have is, that's a double block. That's a double block. And then the actual cleats on the Tiger are to the side. So how should we draw this? With a block there, and then that's a cleat there. And then the same on this side, cleat like that. These block and cleat mechanisms are called Harken reversible cams. They are very good indeed. So if we wanted to put the rope on it, the rope would come from here, through this block, up, and then down, through here, and then up, and then down, around this one. And we're basically doing the same on this side, like that. And that gives us, what does that give us? I suppose that'd be 4, 5, 6, 7, about a 7-2 downhaul system, maybe more. I don't know if these actually multiply the effort, give us more mechanical advantage. These ones on the side, I think they probably do. So it's either a 7 or a 9-2 downhaul system. So if you didn't want to put these on there, then there would be many other ways that you could come up with a solution to having one cleat. Like on the Hobie Pacific, we have something very similar, except we just use two. What have we got there? We've got one triple block up here, with which dead ends onto there, and then God, I'm trying to think what this looks like, and then a single block in the middle of the mast, like on the Hobie 16. Easy. There we go. So I'd say if the mast section is the same, do it. I think it's a good idea. Get a bit more downhaul on. Yeah, I wouldn't go much more than a 6-1 though on the Getaway, just because of the way that the sail hooks on at the top of the mast. I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, Declan, but I think the Getaway uses the same halyard lock as a Hobie 16. Is that correct? Because if it does, then I wouldn't go much more than a 6-1. All right. And the reason he's just added, Declan wants to do this is he wants a better position on the speed stick for 2023. Don't we all? Yes. Very good. Yeah, and you'll notice if you head over to the new speed stick page, not only have the Swiss guys once again put in a monster speed using that square top forward sailing mainsail, but also on there is the new 2023 speed stick apparel from totaljoyrider.com. Oh yes, we've now even got a speed stick water bottle. Very good. But do be aware, those bottles at the moment are only shipping from the USA. Everything else on the website is shipping from the continent where you live. So the times it takes or import tax, that sort of thing, isn't too juicy. Okay, we continue. All right, we got Scott on board, joining late. Not a problem. We're still here for you, Scott. Great to have you with us. All right. Toot says we have mud sharks in Lake Buchanan. Got to watch out for those bad boys. They'll chew through your sail. All right, Ian's on board. Hello from Nova Scotia. I picked up a Hobie 16 a few years back for $700. Tequila Sunrise sails. Nice. With the blue hulls. It would be a dream to have brand new Tequila Sunrise sails. Wouldn't that be nice? It'd be absolutely fantastic. All right. So Ryan says, all right, he's got a true story here with the whales. He had to dodge them last week with his Nacra 500 Honeycat. That's what happens if you sail in Maui. Just be careful out there, guys. All right. So Declan says he was thinking 2 blocks, top block with a hook, the foot of the sail, then a bottom block like the main sheet. Yeah. So a 6-1 with 2 triple blocks. I think you'd be absolutely cooking there. Nice. Yeah. And as Chris says in the next comment, just transplant a Hobie 16 system straight on there. Yes, halyard lock on top of the mast. Yeah, cool. Oh, it's a ring and hook. Yeah, so the ring and let's draw this system. Actually, I think it's interesting. So 3 main different systems for hooking a mainsail up. We're going on a tangent. Yes, we are. All right. Just for those of you who are not aware, but on catamarans, we hook the mainsail up at the top of the mast because generally the luff of the mainsail is under a lot of strain, but also because it's longer than most monohulls, to use rope, you'd like you would on a monohull, and tie it off at the bottom, you would either need to have quite a thick, strong rope, or you'd experience quite a lot of stretch, which is why on a catamaran the sail locks at the top of the mast. So let's draw 3 masts. In fact, there's number 1, number 2, and number 3. So system number 1, which is, I would say, the most widely used, but it's used on the most different types of catamaran, but it's not the most widely used because, as we know, there are more Hobie 16s in the world than every other catamaran combined. So the first one is with the hook and ring. So what you have on your mast is a hook. There's some pop rivets there holding it on. And then what you have on the top of the sail, which would actually be part of the shackle that goes on there, is a ring. And then that's the shackle there. And then the ring locates onto the hook. So that is the system that is on the Hobie 18, the Getaway, I've just learned, the Hobie 17, the Hurricane 5.9, probably on Chris's Prindle 19. I'd be surprised if it wasn't, on the Tornado, and on a great many types of boat. Very popular system, very common, extremely reliable, because you've got a dirty, great big stainless steel ring, stainless steel hook that is not going to break. If it is going to break, you're going to have plenty of warning. Now, the second system, this is what I think is actually the best system. This is the system that we have on the Hobie Tiger, Hobie Fox, Hobie 20. I think the Wildcat had the same system, but we actually have a hole in the top of the mast. So if we just illustrate this slightly better, so if this is the top of the mast, and then on the top of the sail, the actual sail itself, and there's the rest of the sail there. So on the actual sail itself, it's got a hook that attaches on the sail. So what happens is we pull the sail up, and the sail actually goes beyond the top of the mast because the halyard attaches here. So the pulley that it goes through is there. So that is how we're pulling the sail up beyond the top of the mast. And then that hook locates in the hole. Now, the reason why I think this is the best system is because it means when the sail is hooked in, it is the only system that actually puts the sail right at the top of the mast. That is much more efficient, much better aerodynamics, less tip vortex, and all sorts of disturbance in the force up there. Like on this system, the top of the sail would be that much below the top of the mast. Then system number 3 is the most commonly used, is like on the Hobie 16, Hobie 14, Hobie 15, Hobie Dragoon, Hobie Twixie, not Getaway, Hobie Teddy, Hobie Catsy. It's very much a Hobie system. But what we have is a big wheel at the top of the mast. And then on the front of the mast, you have this fork like this. And then the sail attaches to a wire halyard. So it's wire, which runs over that sheave And then on the wire, exactly the right position is a lug or ferrule like that. And then that means when this is the sail over this side, when the sail pulls down, that lug pulls against that fork like this and stops the sail from coming down. There we go. There's a quick bit of stuff that you probably didn't even want to know about, but you're getting it anyway. All right. So Chris says, I bet there's rum in that bottle today. No, just white wine spritzer. Mm. Ooh. Oh, it's a real livener. Okay. So just scrolling back. All right. So Toot says, I want to try swapping mast and sail on the 17 for a Whirlwind R plus flat top and the Prindle 18 jib to the Getaway for greater speed out of the Getaway. The mast foot is the same, but surely on the Getaway, it's the mast is shorter. I'm just thinking. There we are. All right. So next preloaded question. All right, and this one comes from Wahoo Whisperer, sailing in Okinawa, Japan. I'm thinking this might be Ken. Actually, he's changed his name on. We will have seen Ken on Show Us Your Cat about 2 years ago, sailing a Hobie 14 from Okinawa, Japan. Absolutely amazing. I would say still my favorite ever feature on Show Us Your Cat, because it's the only one with whales. All right. So he says he was out on his 14 yesterday, snapped a rudder blade. So he was not that phased about the rudder blade. It was one of the solid plastic blades, which are, to be honest, they're the most prone to breaking, because if you load that plastic up too much, it's just molded plastic. There's nothing inside it. Too much sideways pressure, that bad boy's going to break. So he's just skimming through his question here, is what would happen if the other rudder blade snapped as well on a Hobie 14, no jib, just the mainsail? Would it actually be possible to sail the boat? Whew. So how do we sail with no rudders on a catamaran with just the mainsail? And not only that, but how do we sail the Hobie 14 just on the mainsail, no rudders? I would say this is going to be very challenging indeed, especially if there's a bit of wind. Yeah, especially if there's a bit of wind, I think it's going to be a challenge. Now, the first thing to sailing a boat like that with no rudders is, if you want to move forwards, you've pretty much got to have the main sheet and the traveler all the way out, completely out, because what's going to happen is every time the mainsail fills, it's going to try to bring the boat up into the wind more. Yeah. And then the actual steering of the boat, being able to decide on where we're going. Do you know what? I'm going to make a video on this once we're back on the water this year. I'm going to take the Hobie 14 out, no rudders, and see if I can actually sail it quite ambitiously around a course. Ambitious. Yes, but you've got to be ambitious these days. Yeah. But it's all about where you position your weight. So if this is our boat, mainsail all the way out all the time, and then to really get some sort of chance, we want to have, if it's windy, it's going to be more difficult, but I would go on the leeward side of the boat, and there'll be a position probably around here where the boat will go in a straight line. If you go further backwards, the boat will bear away, in theory, until the mainsail fills, and then it will probably come back up into the wind. If you go further forwards, color coded, then the boat will head up. That is pretty much it. Forwards and backwards to control the boat, but there's absolutely nothing you can do with the mainsail. In fact, what I would do is, if you were out sailing and it's downwind to get back to the beach, then two things you could do is, one would actually be to drop the mainsail and really sit at the back of the boat. The boat will then pivot and point towards the beach, and you'll just get blown back in on the mast. That would be one thing to do if you had to sail downwind. Or the other thing you could do to sail downwind is to turn the boat up into the wind and then sit or stand on the bow, because then what's going to happen is we're going to get blown downwind. You could do this without dropping the mainsail. You've got no rudders to catch in the water, but by standing on the bows, what that means is the bows are then acting like rudders, very straight rudders. And if it was windy, that would be the way to get downwind, standing on the bows or dropping the mainsail. The other thing you could do, if you didn't want to do that, if you wanted to try everything, is to get the boat going downwind more, actually detach the main sheet from your boom so that the boom could go all the way out, just light winds, all the way out up to the shroud. And that means you'll be able to turn more downwind before it catches. But backpedaling slightly, if you've snapped one rudder blade, then I think the most seaman-like thing to do is to then not snap the other one. So you can avoid snapping the other one by really taking it easy. Once one's snapped, you should really take it easy and just pretty much coax the boat back in, because just having one rudder on a 14, much easier. There we go. Declan says, use the drag technique to steer the boat, hang off a hull to slow one side of the boat. Oh, with your foot, possibly, but I prefer the weight moving method. There we go. All right, so there we are, I believe. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. I will just I'll put this in the live chat. This is for Mark, who wanted to see some of this. JBMGT. That's the name of the channel that you might be looking for. Otherwise, I'll see you on Sunday. I'll do the what went wrong video as a premiere so that we can have some live chat at that. That'll be at the normal time on Sunday. What went wrong? If you've had something wrong happen while you've been out sailing and you happened to capture the moment with some video footage, then yes, we want to see that. So get involved. Otherwise, oh, here we go. Just last thing. Ryan in Maui says, an open invite for all of the Joyrider global community. You are all invited to go and sail with Ryan if and when you make it to Maui. Reach out and we will chase the nectar in the bay. Wow, what an offer. Go to Maui, go sailing with Ryan on Honeycat. Just ignore the fact that he's been the most featured sailor on What Went Wrong. Hopefully, all those eggs have been broken now and the omelet's ready to cook. But I would certainly be tapping Ryan up for a go if I was in that neck of the woods. All right. So thanks to everyone for tuning in. See you on Sunday. Stay safe. Have a great sail if you're going sailing. Get on the speed stick. Thank you, Declan. Have a great weekend. Thank you, Toot. And thank you, Lee. Thanks to everyone. And thank you very much. Thanks, Chris. Remember the Eads of March regatta coming up soon. In fact, if you're having a regatta and you want me to help you to promote it, let me know. Send me an email. Emails are the best for me for this sort of thing. Send me an email with the information. And I think what I'm going to start doing is putting together a monthly regatta video, what regattas are coming up, all different classes, all parts of the world. So if your regatta is in September, I can put that in every episode up until when it happens. So probably first episode in about 2 weeks when I get my acting order. There you go. All right. Toodaloo.